It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it We know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along.
By Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Sonnenberg, that council move out of closed session and reconvene in open session at 1:14 p.m. Those in favor? 2, I've got enough. That means it is carried. Thank you. We concluded our discussion in closed session concerning potential land acquisition in Ward 5, and council gave staff direction on that subject. If you want to pull your binders, we'll get back to our budget session from this morning. I would like you to go, please, to tab 4 and go all the way down to the tab that says Norfolk County Operating Budget. There's a summary there, which we saw this morning, of all the big picture, as we'll call it. And I would like then to go to the tab that says Mayor and Council. We'll go through these department by department. So I will let you get to that. I am on page 4-10. 4-10 in tab 4. The tab on the left-hand side should say Mayor and Council, and then just into that tab on 4-10 gives a summary of the Mayor and Council showing a 9.5% increase, 18 over 17, and the main objectives and the main budget drivers and other information is all in the page before it. So I'll let you have a look at that for a moment. Any questions on that? Councillor Height, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm looking at the 2017 forecasted actuals under transfer payments and grants.
Okay.
And it's almost 400,000 and it had an approved budget of 205,000. I'm wondering what went wrong there.
Kathy or James, can you explain the transfer payment grants budget to forecasted actuals?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Height, we had an additional payment for SWIFT for 2017 that we did not budgeted for. I believe it was around 57,000. We also reduced some pre-approved we waived some fees. I'm sorry. You're talking about the transfer payments, right, or the grants?
Well, they're both
okay,
on
they're
the
both
same
on the
line.
same one. Okay, yeah. So we had the SWIFT payment. We that was actually 253,259, and we had only actually budgeted 43,700 for the SWIFT payment, and the balance of that difference was just for some unallocated grants that council approved throughout the year.
Okay, so when I'm looking at your adjusted budget of 262, will that factor in the new SWIFT and basically the historical figures so that it actually comes close this time?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Height, yes, we have.
Thank you.
Rolliver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I understood that after Councillor Height raised it, but Kathy, again, sorry, just for my thick head, you're saying we had budgeted a payment to SWIFT of around 56,000 in 2017 and actually ended up paying them 200 and some odd thousand?
That's correct. We actually, but the budget, I spoke there, the budget was actually 43,700. And yes, we did do a large payment of 253, just over 253,000, and that was for a catch-up from previous years.
Okay, so probably all SWIFT partner municipalities had their allotment increased, or did we just accidentally forget to make payments for the preceding 2 or 3 years? Or how could there have been that much of a difference?
Through Councillor Oliver to Councillor, sorry, through the Mayor to Councillor Oliver. Mr. Cribbs is going to respond to that question for you.
Mr. Cribbs, please.
Council may recall that Mr. Johnson and I wrote a report to it the last meeting before we broke in July. It's a combination of a number of factors. We did miss last year's payment for reasons that are unclear to me. Beyond that, this was the year when everything crystallized and the sort of most of the balloon came due, for lack of better phraseology. So we paid far more last calendar year than and it was 2 years worth plus the balloon payment. So that we've now essentially paid our amount in, and a future council will decide whether it will take its monies back or reinvest the money we will earn from doing so in about 4 years' time.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, just wonder, why would this SWIFT project come out of the mayor and council services budget? It's odd to me.
That was a grant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was considered a grant, so anytime there's a grant-related expense, and that's the area that we put it.
And James, just on that line, our $25,000 commitment to SCORE would come from the same area? Correct, yeah, as a grant. Anything further on the mayor and council? Let's go on to the next tab then, please. It's the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer. Summary is on 4-13. General operations on 4-16. I'll let you have a look at this and entertain any questions on this budget. Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Brunton.
And I meant to ask this question earlier to the county manager, but can you explain to me again, and I read through different departments where there's money coming out for legal services, money going in and that. Can you give me the, how this whole thing breaks down? Like there's a whole chunk of money in one place and then how much has been removed in another? That's what I'm really looking for.
If you need exact specifics of where the money came from, I will defer to our treasurer. If a generalist answer will suffice, it is to say that there were budgets for legal spending across this corporation in virtually every department, but certainly in every division. And we looked at where we thought most of the billing would come from, and adequate monies were taken from those budgets to 100% fund the position. So the big answer is we've taken it from across the corporation. If you want more specificity, I'll defer to our good people in finance. I hope that addresses it.
Is it safe to say this year that you're, I guess maybe a lot of unknowns, so you're not, like you said, we spent 500 grand on legal services. We've hired a lawyer, we're going to spend X number of dollars, but you're not going to reduce that 500 by a lot for now. Is that my understanding?
That's overall fair. The two things to sort of keep track of within that statement are, firstly, we're spending well over 500, 520 and 534 the last 2 years, but only budgeting about 350. So the real problem is there's about 180 in actual spend that's never been accounted each of the last two, and I didn't even look back to year 3 or earlier. But that's more than it costs to run that office just in the overage that was never budgeted for, but exists in reality. That said, we're in the transition period. I note that our new county solicitor started on the second day of a week-long OMB hearing, and so obviously couldn't take over that matter, and we haven't got the bill for that hearing. So in this transitional time, we still have files with outside counsel that are going to be being billed on and will be billed on, and during that transitional period, there's no real way to reduce those bills or that amount of spending. What's going to happen over the course of this year is the outside spending will decrease dramatically the later we go into the year, and the savings will begin accruing substantially. But in the month of January and February, we'll almost notice no difference. In fact, we're paying for a staff lawyer, and we're continuing to pay for the outside bills on work that's being done.
Okay, so, and I apologize, I'm maybe slow at this, but the net is what I'm looking at. Is it safe to say there is no difference for now?
Well, the challenge there is that the county solicitor can save 100% of his salary, and we'd still be back just to what we actually budgeted in each of the prior years, because we've been 180 over in each of the last 2 years in our spend.
I understand that.
So, I mean, if we spend the same, we'd still be enormously better off. So we do need some time with the data.
Okay.
That said, to finance the position, we have taken money from elsewhere in the corporation, so on paper, it nets to zero as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure it probably relates to what Councillor Brunton was suggesting. When we look at services where it's gone up 140 and new budget initiative of 30, is that all to do with the new solicitor?
Yes, the only substantial, maybe Finance was going to say something. The only substantial change in that area is the fact that we've added one human being the county solicitor, and then the very incidental costs around training.
So, Mr. Mayor, again, I'm like Councillor Brunton, my mind isn't so good here. Under salaries and benefits, we have $166,000. We go down to, and we see 140 plus 30, and that all has to do with the county solicitor. Am I correct on that?
There's roughly $2,000 that pertains to myself, but otherwise, yes.
That's pretty expensive, isn't it? If I add that, that's over $300,000.
The salary and service you're talking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then, I misunderstood. The other thing we've done structurally, and we're going to see how it works, but we have moved all of the outside legal budgets from the rest of the corporation, or virtually all, into the office of the county solicitor, so that the county solicitor can review every legal bill we receive for completeness, for reasonableness, and so that he signs off in the future on whether the notional system being legal work comes to him, he makes the determination whether he can do it or not. It stays with him or it goes outside, and so he will run our external legal bills. So he has access to the pool of money for existing legal work outside, and we'll be signing off on that. So that there still is, because remember, we've been spending $530, $520 each the last few years. So he's got access to the pool of money to control our outside legal spend with an obvious goal of driving that downwards. So those aren't new monies across the corporate. It's new in this little area, and it seems huge because we went from 2 people to 3, and now we've got a big legal budget. But corporate-wide, if you look at the big picture, there's no change. We've just moved those amounts from around the corporation into this one place. It's one centralized number so that we can easily tell what we've been spending. It should make for much easier accounting and much easier year-over-year comparisons for you and successor councils in future years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further on that? Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm looking at fees and service charges there. I see under the revenue side, it's way down, and you're expecting another decline in fees and services. And then underneath, if you go down to the bottom, other revenues, it's down. Like you had a budget of $13,000, it hit $51,000. Like, Why are the fees dropping? The one we're on, 4-13, under the revenue sections. So there's fees and service charges. You know, you had a budget of 148,000 last year, and it came in at 122,000. That's a big loss of fees or service charges. And then if you look further down under other revenue, there's $51,000 in there with a budget of 13,000. So I don't want to dig in the weeds, but I'd like to know what's going on there. If are we not charging for the fees?
I'll pass the baton over to finance for the actual how we account.
Through the mayor to Councillor Height. It's basically mainly reduced lottery licenses, and the clerk may have more of a better explanation of. Sorry about that. It's mainly due to lottery licenses being reduced, and again, the clerk has probably more information on the reasonings behind the reduction, and just generally other licenses have been, the utilization is down by about $4,100.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of the lottery license being reduced, our income, would that have anything to do with new demands being placed on us from the province or something? Because people who are applying for a lottery license are complaining about the fact that there's a lot of hoops that they have to jump through, and some organizations are not applying because they don't want to jump through all the hoops.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's some factors respecting lottery licensing that we've kind of brought to council's attention over the last few years. One big factor, a couple big factors that we had was, one was the chances bingo. When it closed down, that was a big one, and we estimated a decline in the first year that it was closed, but we still didn't accurately capture how much the bingo revenues fell. So the bingo revenues are a bit less than even what we had hoped. We'd hoped that that industry kind of area would bounce back a bit, but it hasn't, and that was a huge one. Other areas, if you look at things like the Catch the Ace, which was hugely successful, but we only took in $1,000 from that. So if we had any other group that was running a weekly lottery, we would have gotten $100 a week for that 52 weeks. So you're comparing $1,000 to, $5,000 or $6,000 that the municipality would have gotten from that. So it's a lot of work to do those, and we're taking less money, more up front. The other thing that we've kind of did a report to council before is with the break-open tickets, so those are the ones that are commonly sold at variety stores, is the province has really been aggressively promoting provincial sales of break-open tickets. So it used to be, 3 or 4 years ago, it used to be that almost all of them in variety stores in Norfolk County were locally managed by local community groups, but now larger Ontario charitable groups have gone and put them up all throughout Ontario. So we've got a lot of external groups coming in to do lotteries here, in which case we don't get the revenue. So what we've seen is continual steady decline. We have had people say, well, we're not going to jump through the hoops and do lottery licensing, but within our overall thing, it's maybe 1 or 2 groups a year, and it would probably account for less than 2 or 3% of the decline that we're seeing.
Thank you. Anything further? I am now on page 4-19. If you need to go back, let me know. That's not a problem. As you know, council services under the direction of the CAO now, and certainly in this budget, the election charges are showing as an expense, and also the revenue coming from reserves. Is there any questions on page 419? I'll give you a moment to look at those. Councillor Black.
Talked about the hiring of the Integrity Commissioner. Do we know exactly when that might take place sometime later this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we're hoping, we've had a couple versions of draft reports, so we're hoping to bring that draft report before council in February or March. And it's an RFP process, so it may take some time to go out and do the RFP. But we've seen what a lot of other municipalities have done, so we've got a fairly good idea on what we should be RFPing for. And there's a lot of municipalities doing this at the same time. So we're hoping to have somebody in place, and I certainly would like to have something done before the summer break, because there are some issues with our current code of conduct that we would like to at least see. If not the integrity commissioner is in place, we'd at least like to see the new code of conduct be in place before the summer recess.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Mr. Mayor, on the same point, I was listening carefully to Andy's response to that. I think realistically, we may have a hard time getting whoever it is, the integrity commissioner in place. And I see we've estimated a 2018 levy impact of $10,000, which I realize is peanuts. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask the clerk, what would be the implications of a deferral, if you like, of any expenditure on the actual commissioner's office until the 2019 budget and a brand new council, and we'll have the code of conduct amendments in place?
If I could, I don't think you should look at this as a financial matter or issue. It's really important that we get this right, and I think the new council, whether it deals with a budget in December or January, is going to be faced with a $200 million undertaking within weeks of starting. If we wait, they're also going to have to be faced with the question of how to police themselves. I think we could set up a very good system with this amount of money, possibly less, prior to them coming in, and it really sets, it's a basic nuts and bolts of government. The new council, if it wants to amend its code of conduct, which is really the instrument that gives the integrity commissioner the power to do his or her investigations, they'll be free to change, to amend that, to say we want different rules on ourselves, but I think we would do a great service to the next council. I think your skill, knowledge, expertise, and length of service on this council will help you come up with a very good decision. This is something we can do regardless of whether or not you're a lame duck council, I say respectfully. This is a very good governance piece that you could bring and sort of gift to your successor. We say 10,000, we don't know that we'd even spend that. Again, I can't. But we need some sort of placeholder, and I think this is a great gift to a future council, but you've got the skill and knowledge and aptitude needed to set in place all of the apparatus so that this is working when they hit the ground running. And if they want to make changes to it thereafter, I guess that's their business, but I would really encourage us doing this. It's not a positive expenditure, but very shortly we're going to have to undertake this expense anyway. I think this council is in a great position to help set up something to work for the future.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I was wondering if I could ask the clerk a question about what would the cost be for a referendum vote on the next election?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to look at the timelines, but if you recall the last election in 2014, we considered a referendum on fluoride, and we started that process, I believe, in September or October of the year prior to the election. So the legal process for defining a question on the ballot and for putting it on there, and it requires a staff report, is quite involved, and I think my recollection of the act is that we'd have to have a final bylaw with a final question by the end of March, or start of March. That's my recollection off the top of my head. So at this point right now, we've got February. That would be almost impossible to get a question on the ballot at this point.
Ooh, that complicates things, because one of the things I would be looking at is the community hub. And for me personally, I think it should be a referendum item and let the voters vote for it, because Yeah, there's a lot of talk, and there's these committees and the traveling road show and this and that, but take the question to the voters, and then council has a direction provided by the voters and get it on this ballot. But what I'm hearing now is we need to do that immediately, like right now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be very difficult. Well, firstly, such a question wouldn't be legally binding upon the next term of council because it doesn't fall under the legislation as something that would be legally binding. And it would be very difficult to determine what exactly type of question we could have. So there would have to be some kind of prolonged debate here. And I don't know if we could actually get the community involved in that debate and determine a final question, to get a final bylaw by March, simply because what is the question? Is it for a hub or not for a hub? Is it where the hub's going? Is it what's going to be in the hub? You have to be very specific on this question, and you also have to think about if there is a question on the ballot, how can the other side come and defeat it, right? So if there are people against, take the feedback that we've received to date is that overwhelming support for Simcoe. So perhaps it would just result in the community, people outside Simcoe, if you put something on there, whether or not we're going to have a hub, perhaps everybody else outside Simcoe just votes against it. They could still technically want a hub, but they just don't want Simcoe to get it. So you could have the community divided, and it doesn't really necessarily increase voter turnout or produce any positive information for the next term of council if you do that. So all those aspects really have to be thoroughly thought of in developing a question.
Right, well, I'm pretty much sure we were past that point. We've done all that, Simcoe's the spot, I get that, but I really think it needs to be taken to the voter. Yes or no, community hub, that's it. Flat out, plain and simple. Do you support spending tax money on the hub? Yes or no? And that's what the vote comes down to. I know other municipalities do it, and sure, it's not binding. You can totally go against the voters anytime you want, right? So,
Well, yeah, and I agree that next Tuesday, we have a discussion on the results of the ad hoc committee on recreation and future facilities. Perhaps that discussion can take place that evening.
sure, I'll just bring this budget sheet with me, Mr. Mayor, and I'll find a spot in the clerk's budget for it. I'm just kind of looking for an estimate, to be honest with you, but if it's 100 grand, I can find it in here.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? I'm going to move on then. I see Yakov, Mr. Sluchenkov, and his staff are ready to go to Employee and Corporate Services Division. The summary can be found on page 4-21. Mr. Sluchenkov, I'm going to get into more details here in a moment, but you certainly may wish to make some comments at the onset here, some brief comments about the summary or your budget proposal, and then we'll go into the details. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do, since this is my first time around with this particular process, one of the things that I did is I looked back at certainly last year's presentation, and I understand it's not unusual to perhaps provide some opening comments about the budget overall, and then highlighting specific items, and perhaps addressing or explaining some of those things in advance, and obviously for the latter portion, the opportunity to address any specific questions, if that's okay with you. To my right is the Director of Corporate Support Services, Shelley Darlington. To my left, Carly Sanamon, who's our Administrative Coordinator. Both faces I'm sure you've seen before. Overall, the 2018 Employee and Corporate Services budget, as presented, shows a reduction in the net levy impact of 2.1% from the previous year, and that's all of the departments that fall within the division overall. Further, I'll break it down by sort of more specific categories within the department. Sort of the Employee and Corporate Services Administration budget in and of itself provides for a 1.9 net levy increase from the 2017 approved budget. And the main budget driver under that category is the 6,500 economic and merit increase to salaries and benefits. Moving on to the second part, and chronologically in your budget binders, this year the corporate support services budget that Shelley oversees is presented in two segments. One has general operations and the second one for the POA area. And the corporate support services general operational budget provides for a 5.9% net levy decrease from the 2017 approved budget. And this amount includes the new budget initiative for the proposed full-time property management position, or now under the renaming of the non-union position initiative, it's called Realty Services Coordinator. And so that position has been fully funded from the reserve with no net levy impact. Another significant driver is the procurement card recoveries are increasing by $17,000 this year as well due to higher volume of use, and it's something that we and Shelley spends quite a bit of time advocating on, so we're happy to see those amounts increase. The POA budget provides for a 2.8% decrease. The POA fine budgeted revenue remains at $1.1 million as in 2017. There's also some additional increases to the revenue for the collection agency cost. Moving on to the information technology budget, it provides for an 11.3% net levy increase from the 2017 approved budget. The increase is primarily being driven by a $49,000 upgrade to the property management software, and you recall from previous discussions, that's an upgrade to CityView, which is primarily used by the Development and Cultural Services Division. 50% of that cost will be funded by a transfer from the Building Permit Stabilization Reserve. Interdepartmental recoveries are increasing by $12,800 for IT support services. Materials and supplies have increased by $5,000, driven primarily by historical actuals and the increased needs of counting staff for computer supplies. Finally, the 2018 Human Resources and Staff Development budget provides for a 3.4% increase from the 2017 approved budget. Salaries and benefits budget is seeing a merit and economic increase of $37,300. Insurance premiums are being reduced by $11,900 for excessive indemnity loss and AD&D based on historical data. One of the main drivers is materials and supplies budget increase of $6,000 as a result of partially of a transfer from the CAO's office to amalgamate some of our and centralize some of our training-related expenses, as well as looking at the fact that we have over 200 employees eligible for retirement, and the retirement gift budget in that regard needs to be increased as well. And finally, interdepartmental recoveries are increasing by $18,600, and that is the end of my comments, and we're open to have any questions on those.
Sir, and I'll entertain questions and comments throughout the entire Employee and Corporate Services tab from front to back. And I'll certainly start with Councillor Wells, and I see Councillor Brunton in Columbus.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I think I had a heart attack when I read this page, and just so I don't want to have another heart attack, because I'm sure I misread it. And I need clarification, because this is rainbow at the pot of gold at the rainbow. Is this really true, Mr. Mayor? Is this really true? Is this really true? All the time I've been on council, I've never seen this before. We had actually a department come in under budget? That can't be, Mr. Mayor. It just cannot possibly function that way.
Mr. Sluchenkov, don't get sucked in here. But you can certainly answer that if you wish to verify that that it is correct.
That is a yes.
Now you can have your heart attack, but I'm only kidding. Please don't. Please don't. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I want to go right into the provincial offenses. That's page 428. I thought, and I'm looking at the performance measures, and the POA fines outstanding since its inception is still going up. And I thought there was some means by which the province has allowed us to collect more. And I'm just wondering what's what's happened there. Like, I got the impression, like $6 million still in outstanding fines. Are we, looks like to me, nobody's paying anything. And what's the point of fining them if nobody pays? And when you look at the recovered by agency and recovered by staff, and I support that. I mean, they've, I guess, done their best, but, you know, there's, when I look at the millions that are out there, are we getting anywhere, or will we get anywhere?
I'll start with some general comments, and Shelley can elaborate on those. Quite honestly, I'm not personally very familiar with sort of any of the ministry related tools or abilities in what to do with these amounts, but as you can see from sort of the performance measures in front of you, sort of the question of are we getting anywhere? The answer is yes. We are collecting, and you see that breakdown year to year. Historically speaking, in my familiarity with other municipalities, that, you know, is usually from how much you'd like to be able to recover. Obviously, you'd like to be able to recover every single dollar from every single fine, and you do sort of your best efforts in a combination between internal resources as well as the use of external collection agencies to that effect. And so I guess we're getting somewhere. The amounts are increasing, and sort of the last amount that you see is missing the third quarter for 2017 as well. So it's quite likely that in the third quarter we were able to collect additional amounts, and potentially the collection agency was able to collect additional amounts. And sort of if you look at 2015, 2016, 2017, we're able to collect more and more every year. So that's what I say generally in response to your question.
Well, I guess what I see in the revenue side, if I'm reading this right, the forecasted actual for what you've budgeted for other revenues, and I assume that's where the fines are, is again down substantially, $846,200. That's what you anticipate. I assume that's fines for the year end. Am I right on that?
Through the mayor, that line includes both fines and collection agency fees.
Yes.
The number is a little bit low comparatively in our forecasted actuals. I think we're going to land around $938,000 this year.
Okay, well, Shelley, can you tell me, like, the $6 million and something that's outstanding, is that going anywhere? Or is it just a figure that we like to say how badly we've done? I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying, God, that's a lot of money sitting there doing nothing.
Through the mayor, the province did implement some additional collection tools. They are somewhat limited. You have to also keep in mind the clientele that we also deal with. Sometimes hard times fall on these particular individuals, and so it is difficult to collect some of those those fines, excuse me. We're averaging collecting about $400,000 of the aged receivables in-house and about $80,000 for the collection agencies. We have a pretty aggressive collection strategy, but people are only able to pay so much. So from our perspective, we attempt to put people on monthly payment plans to get their fines collected, but it's just the amount that they're able to pay on those fines.
Okay, well, what changed with the province that allows us to collect more?
Through the mayor, there was a number of items that they brought forward with respect to license suspensions, and that there is now the ability to pay some aged POA accounts at the Service Canada locations. Generally speaking, when we reviewed those fines that fell into certain categories for those additional incentives, very few of our aged receivables fell into that new collection methods that were available to us.
Thank you.
Councillor Columbus?
Yes, my question was similar to Councillor Brunton's, and just to add to that, the collection agency, is it 100% commission, or is there a base amount that they get per collection? And what can we do to shake them up to show improvement of collection? Do we make a call every month and say, hey, you know, how many you got caught up this month, or what's our monitoring system?
Through the mayor, we have a robust collection agency system. We have two collection agencies that work files. They are assigned primary files and secondary files. We pay a different percentage based on if it's a primary file or a secondary file. So for a primary file, we pay 11.5% up to 13%, and for a secondary file, we pay 19.35% to 24%. Keep in mind that in 2011, Council approved the addition of adding collection fee costs onto fines. So although we pay that percentage, we also recover it back when the fine is paid.
Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I was looking at this one with quite a bit of concern as well. If you look at the expenditure side of it, and you compare it to the forecasted actuals and then the adjusted budget ahead, it's not even possible to mathematically work these figures out. And then if you add in the revenues, like the deltas on these things are massive. Like even the first one, salaries and benefits, right? We had a budget of 327, we paid 368. So somehow miraculously it's going to come in at 329. I don't see how. They couldn't do it the year before. And if you go down to expenditures, the swing there is $78,000, right? The revenue side of things, we're never going to meet the negative $505,000 when you're out 269 from budget to actuals. Like, how do you tighten up this department? Because something's broken if you have swings that badly, where your budgets are being blown away by your actuals like that. Something's broken. To the point that we don't even know the salaries and benefits number.
Through the mayor, I'll certainly ask our financial analyst and our financial team to chime in as appropriate. I'll speak to, you have a number of questions, so I'll speak to the first one regarding salaries and benefits. So we have an increased forecasted actual amount there, and I do believe that is because we had some leave of absence and accommodated time in that POA operation in 2017. So it is my understanding that there is a transfer from a reserve account to pay the differential because we had an accommodated position. And it always feels good when my finance team is shaking yes, they're concurring with what I'm saying, and I am getting that nod from Cindy Jacob back there, so thank you. So that's the first question with the differential in salaries and benefits. We had a person on accommodation, there's a transfer from reserve that offsets that overestimated forecasted actual compared to budget. With respect to improvements in the POA operation, certainly that is one of the primary issues that staff works on. To lower our expenditures and increase our revenues so that we can continue to have a net levy, a positive net levy impact, I guess, that we actually generate revenue in this cost center. Keeping in mind that we can't control the number of charges that are laid on any given year, so it does fluctuate from one year to the next year. Some of the immediate things that we're working on in the POA operation is our court utilization time. So making sure that we're scheduling court time appropriately and reducing the number of hours that we require from the Justice of the Peace or from provincial or municipal prosecutors. The other big impact that we're working on